Alright, so hopefully you have started to see how every section we've covered so far is some sort of fraction, therefore is some sort of division. So the theme of chapter 6 is starting to pick up for you. 6.5 is solving percent problems with equations. So we are going to just basically practice writing equations that talk about percentages, and you'll find that a lot of the time we're doing some division. So again, that's why it would be in this chapter. Remember that percent means per 100, cent meaning that 100 prefix, so like century is 100 years, or a cent, there's 100 pennies or 100 cents in a dollar. Okay, so percent is always per 100, so just keep that in mind. A couple extra words that are really important for this equation solving are of, is, and what. So these are the three numbers that, or three words that you want to watch out for. When you see of, that means multiply. When you see is, equals, and what, that's our unknown, so that's going to be our variable. Something to keep in mind also is when they give you a percent, we want to write it as a decimal, okay? So percents written as decimals when we write them into the problem. Alright, so let's look at example 1, and there are 3 parts to this, and they kind of ask us to find a different thing in all 3 of these. So this kind of shows the basic 3 problems that we will look at. Okay, so the first one says 112% of 65 is what number? 650 actually. So find these words, okay, and we can go ahead and set up an equation. So 112%, we're going to write that as a decimal, of, means multiply, 650 is what number? So there's our equation, and we can just go ahead and then multiply that. So let's go back and see if that makes sense. 112%, meaning more than the whole number, is what number? So does 728 make sense? Yeah. Okay, part B, 7% of what number is 31.5? Same idea, 7% of, multiply, what number is 31.5? So again, here's our equation. This one we just had to multiply and we were done. Here you'll see that we have 0.07x equals 31.5, so we have to go ahead and divide. $4.50. Again, check to see if that makes sense. 7% of 450, would that make sense? That's 31.5? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, and then the last part, what percent of 3.5 is 0.84. Okay, same thing. What percent? So that's my x of 3.5 is 0.84. So again, we're going to divide. Okay, and I have x equals 0.24. So just remember, when I put this in there, this was the percentage written as a decimal. And since it's asking me what percent, I need to make sure I go ahead and transfer it back into a percent. Okay? So those are kind of the easy, straightforward ones. It only gets tricky when you have to read through some word problems and decide which parts go where. Okay, so let's look at example 2 in your book. It was reported in 1991 about 59% of the 52.5 million married couples in the United States had two incomes. Approximately how many couples had two incomes in 1991? So I do see the word of. So hopefully that's going to help us set that up. So we said 59% of the 52.5 million is going to give me some number. Okay, so again, we could just go ahead and solve this. So let's just see if it makes sense. We look at the problem, 59% of all married couples that had two incomes, 59%. So is that reasonable? Yeah, I think it's definitely reasonable. Okay, let's look at example 3. In 1992, there were 207,828 women serving in the armed forces, accounting for 11.5% of the total military personnel. In all, how many persons were serving in the armed forces? Okay, so let's go back to percent of something equals something. So in this problem, I see the percent of the total military is women. Okay, so percent in this problem was 11.5% of the total military, and that's what I don't know, because it was asking how many, are women. And I know solving is not the issue. Okay, it's writing it. I know you all know how to solve that. Our answer is 1,807,200. So again, ask yourself, does this make sense? 11% of this, would that be 207,000? Yes, I think that's definitely a reasonable answer. All right, and last but not least, we go back to a tax problem. The total cost of the video game was $51.89. This included the 6% sales tax. What was the price of the game without tax? Okay, so I know it was $51.89 with tax. Okay, so $51.89 is going to equal the price. If you remember this, we want 100% of that plus an additional 6%. So 5189 is the price times 106%. We can go ahead and divide that. Again, I know solving is not necessarily the issue. We get 48.95. Again, ask yourself, is that reasonable? Would this be the price before? Add 6% sales tax to get 51.89. Yeah, again, that makes sense.